right, this is number 8 from Unit 2 on the unit review for the midterm. So again, we just have a picture of a function, and we're going to figure out all these different properties of it. Relative maximum has to be a point that looks like a peak. So if you look at your graph from left to right, we only have one of those points, and it's right there. So that's the point -3, 3. Relative minimums, we have to have a change in direction so that it bottoms out or it looks like a little valley. So as you move from left to right, there's only one of those points here at -1, -1. And then for absolute maximum, there's no stipulation as to what the shape of that has to look like. So when you think about what's your absolute maximum, just try to find the highest point your graph reaches on your graph, which would be over here at 2, 8. And then for absolute minimum, again, same thing, there's nothing specific about what that shape has to look like. Just look for the absolute lowest point on your graph, which would be back here at -8, -2. For domain, we look left to right on the graph. So the farthest to the left this graph reaches is -8. That's a solid point there, so we're going to put a square bracket. The farthest to the right this graph goes to is 2. Again, solid point, square bracket. Range, you're looking low to high. So the lowest this graph reaches is -2. The highest your graph reaches is 8. When you want to find levels or intervals of increasing and decrease, you look at your graph from left to right, and I like to highlight these. So initially, when you start moving on your graph from left to right, this is going uphill, so that would be a level of increase. And then once it hits that relative max, it's going to change direction and start decreasing. And then once it hits that relative min, it's going to change direction again and start increasing. So we have 2 intervals of increase, but 1 interval of decrease. So the interval of increase, you always write this in terms of like between which x values that's occurring between. So the first interval starts back at -8 and ends at -3. So between -8 and -3, your graph is increasing. For decrease, it's going to decrease in between when x is -3 and -1. And then we have one more level or interval of increase, and that's going to go from -1 all the way up to when x is 2. The last part of this question asks for how many values of x. So it just says for how many, it doesn't ask which ones, but for how many values of x does f of x, remember it's just y, equals 0. So you're looking at your graph to find any place where your y coordinate would be 0. So your y-axis goes up and down. So y is 0 here. So anything that crosses this line, which is the line y equals 0, is going to be what you're looking for. So there's 1, 2, 3 different values of x for which your y value would be 0.